We are live. Hello, everybody. Good morning. We'll start right away in respect of those who are already on time. Thanks, everyone, for being there today. My name is Leonardo Toneto. I am advisor here at Luxinnovation on a few areas of Horizon Europe, but one of them includes Marie Curie. And today I'll have the pleasure to introduce my new colleague. But today what we're going to do, before I pass my word to her, introduce her, Marie Curie, so Marie Skłodowska-Curie Action Postdoctoral Fellowship for this year. For those of you who are either candidates applying for it, or maybe you're a research facilitator, PI, research manager. And the idea is give to you, first of all, an overview of what the program is, just to set the stage and let everyone know, let's say, the basics. And then we're going to go into details on proposal writing, and we'll close up a little bit with our support. So what we here from Luxinnovation we can do for you. So I'll give the word to my colleagues. So for those of you who have already been around here before and who know me, you may have already even know Clarice. She's been here in Luxembourg for a while, but now she's joined us, luckily, and she will be presenting here today with me, Clarice Gomez, and that's with you, Clarice. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Leonardo, for the introduction, and I'm really happy to have joined Luxinnovation indeed, and I'm also now a national contact point for the MSCA program for Luxembourg, along with Leonardo. And as you already introduced, I'm going to cover the general aspects of the Postdoctoral Fellowship program, including its types, eligibility, and implementation. I guess we can jump right into it. So here's the agenda for today. They already mentioned that they'll give first this introduction on the program, then he'll go into more details on the proposal, structure, writing, also the evaluation, how it goes, and then use of large language models to support the proposal writing, and how we at Luxinnovation can support you in this process throughout the whole submission. So jumping right into it, the main objective of the Postdoctoral Fellowship program is to reinforce scientific excellence in Europe through enhancing the creative and innovative potential of PhD holders. So it does this by supporting bottom-up projects, meaning it supports any field of research. So whatever suits your needs that are aligned with your priorities. And it also supports advanced training of individuals, so transferable skills, career development, through three main types of mobility. And these are international mobility, interdisciplinary mobility, and mobility across sectors. So from academia to industry or civil society, public administrations, museums, hospitals, and so on. And the program also aims to bridge and expose researchers to the non-academic sector. So projects involving this are also quite welcome. Next slide, please. There are two types of action, European and global fellowships. The European Fellowship is open to researchers of any nationality who wish to carry out a research project in an European country, so a member state or a Horizon Europe associated country. So this means that researchers can move to Europe or can move also within Europe. The duration for the European Fellowship is between 12 and 24 months. The Global Fellowship is open for European nationals or long-term residents, meaning that you have resided here for at least 5 consecutive years. want to engage in research outside Europe, so in a third country. And this gives the opportunity for these researchers to acquire experience or have access to certain infrastructures in a third country, and then bring that knowledge back to their home European institution. The duration is also between 1 and 2 years in the outgoing phase, meaning in the third country, with a 1-year compulsory return phase in their host institution in Europe. The program provides funding with unit cost, or person months. So you don't really need to predefine a budget for your fellowship. The total budget is automatically calculated depending on the duration of your fellowship, on your family status, and on the country of your host. So this table shows the breakdown of the fellowship grant. Essentially, you get an amount per month for different costs. The researcher receives the living and the mobility allowance, and depending on the eligibility, also a family allowance, long-term or special needs allowance. And there are also 2 cost categories of institutional contribution, which are research, training, and networking, and management and indirect costs. So we can take a look in more detail in each of these categories in the next slides. So the living allowance is to cover personnel costs for employment. So the amount that you saw in the previous table is actually before any deductions under national legislation, such as Social Security coverage and income taxes. So this may vary, the final amount that you receive may vary depending on the country of your host. The mobility allowance covers your private mobility related costs. So for travel and accommodation, professional mobility is covered in another category. And if researchers have family obligations, for example, dependents, they may be eligible for a family allowance to cover mobility-related costs for these. If during the action you need to take a long-term leave, for example, paternity leave or sick leave, this long-term leave allowance may cover the costs for these. And finally, special needs allowance is for researchers who have special needs to support the acquisition of specific items or services for these special needs. The last 2 cost categories that are covered by the grant is the research, training, and networking contribution, which covers costs related to training and networking activities. So it's really to cover publication costs, field work, lab material, for example, travel to conferences, and others. This amount goes to the beneficiary, and of course it's calculated monthly, but you don't have to use, of course, that amount per monthly base. You can distribute as you seem fit. And the final last category, management and indirect contribution, is given to the beneficiary to cover their costs that are related to the action. So personnel costs for project management and coordination, for example, and indirect costs. So there are eligibility conditions for researchers. For instance, researchers must have up to 8 years of research experience after being awarded their PhD. And there are exceptions to this calculation, so you can deduct any leave that you might have taken, for example, maternity or parental leave or long-term sick leave, if you did research in a third country or if you have not worked with research at all this can be deduced from this calculation for the 8 years. There is a mobility rule where you cannot have lived or carried out your main activity in the country of the beneficiary for more than 12 months in the 36 months immediately before the call deadline. And it's important to keep in mind that remote work is included in this mobility rule. Regarding the proposal, there can only be one proposal per individual submitted for each call. And researchers can undertake secondments. And these secondments can be in any sector, so academic or non-academic organizations. And it's important to keep in mind that they can take up to 1/3 of the duration of the fellowship. And also this can be taken as a single period during the fellowship, or it can be divided into shorter mobility periods, respecting, of course, this 1/3, maximum 1/3 duration. And the resubmission rule is for proposals that received at least 70% of a score in the previous year's call. They can be submitted immediately in the next call. So it's important to keep in mind that the host institution must be a single entity established in a member state or associated country, so it's a mono-beneficiary. For global fellowships, associated partner of the outgoing phase, so the institution in the third country, must provide a letter of commitment for the submission of your fellowship. The beneficiary must employ and supervise the researcher during the action. And it can be different types of organizations, such as academic, industry, public entity, non-governmental organization, for example. These are important facts regarding the host institution. On the slides, you can see here some key dates for the call of this year. So you can see that the call opened in April already, and the submission deadline is 11th of September. And of course, you must submit the application via the Funding and Tender Opportunities portal, and where you can also find relevant documents related to the program there. And of course, we suggest that you submit some days ahead of this hard deadline to avoid any potential technical issues that can happen on any side. Then after submission, the results are expected to be received in February next year. And the grants should be signed around April, and you can start the project still in April. So this slide shows some statistics on the success rate and cutoff scores for the postdoctoral fellowships. As you can see, this is a very popular program, and the number of applications is high, so the competition is also high. And in the last years, the Postdoctoral Fellowship program received about 8,000 proposals per year, with a success rate about 15%. And of course, it depends a little bit on the year and on the panel. So there are 8 scientific panels from different disciplines and sectors. And you can see here the evolution of the statistics over the last 3 years for, in general, the postdoctoral fellowships, and also divided by European and global fellowship. And you can see also the evolution of the cutoff scores through the last 2 years, which simply reinforce the high competition of the program. So it's a very high cutoff score. So when you prepare your proposal, really keep in mind the excellence aspect, and there is not much room to make mistakes. And also, this is what we're here for. We can help. We can support you in that. So that was it for me. I give the word now to Leonardo to discuss about the proposal. Sorry, I guess we're having some technical difficulties.
Can you hear me now?
No.
Hear me now? Yes. Good. Thank you so much. Sorry for that. So thank you so much, Gladys, for the introduction. So for those of you who already knew, we're familiar with PF. So I will refer to postdoctoral fellowship very often as PF, as you will see throughout the slides. So for those of you who were not familiar with PF, I hope that gave you a base. For those who are familiar, that introduced some new insights. I will try to cover a bit of the proposal writing, focusing primarily here today on the part B, but we'll get to that. So the submission of the PF proposal is split into, say, two main parts. You will get the template for the submission from the funding intenders. So as soon as you start the submission process, you will get a template from there. Please use that template, right? It may sound a bit obvious, but when we'll get to the sections and subsections, one very simple recommendation we can give is to follow the headings that are there. Of course, don't change the headings, but follow the headings and the kind of instructions that are below the headings. Right there, they kind of already describe roughly what you should have in that section and subsection, and make sure to write in those subsections what the draft, what the template is suggesting you to include. That is, don't include, let's say, too much information, just as an example, about your work packages in section 1 or subsection 1.1, because say it will be misplaced. And for an evaluator that will be looking through tens of proposals, if they don't find the information that they're looking for in the right spot, you're already losing points with them, right? So on part A of the proposal, you will have the administrative forms, right, where you talk about or basically you fill in information that are there. So we're not gonna cover it today. The more important parts of it, I would say, the ones you're really gonna spend a lot of time are part B, especially part B1. So part B1 is the core of the proposal, right? That if you follow the template, it's split into 3 sections. So section 1, excellence; section 2, impact; section 3, implementation. On section 1, the excellence, you will tell about what you do. I'm going to break it down later in the following slides, but just to quickly go through it. Section 1, the excellence, you will talk about what you will do. As the name suggests, why your proposal is excellent. I mean, what's the excellence behind it in terms of the scientific aspect of it and the training you're going to do. On section 2 is impact, is sort of like kind of how it matters, so why it matters and how you're going to achieve that. For example, you're going to cover here the dissemination, communication, and exploitation. That is another key point of your proposal. And section 3 is implementation. So how exactly you're going to do that? That is the let's say the project management section of the proposal, where you're going to describe your work packages, your deliverables, the timeline of these things, and how they fit with one another. And you will talk a little bit about your institution too on section 3. On part B2, so yeah, part B1, you have a limit in pages, so 10 pages. I think they also give you there the font size and type of font to use. So don't hack it. Don't try to get around it. If you submit part B1 with over 10 pages, it's going to be cut off, and they will not consider it. On part B2, it has no limits in pages, but for the purpose of the evaluation, for the purpose of the score you're going to get, it will primarily take into account what's in B1. You can include, for example, in your CV, that is a narrative CV, you can include detailed information about what you have done that the evaluator will read during the evaluation, but let's say thinking how they're going to give you the score is primarily what's in B1. Then in B2, you have a description of host, ethics if it applies, security if it applies, a bit on environmental considerations, and letter of commitment for global fellowships only. So you can send, although we wrote here for global fellowship only, you can of course include that for European fellowship, but the sort of the requirement or the expectation that you include this letter of commitment from an associated partner is really only for global fellowship. Then what I'm going to go through here is each one of the subsections, so not just the sections, but the subsections in the proposal, and give you a bit of insights from what are the most common negative comments that people receive for each of the subsections that are already in the template, right? So section 1, excellence, 1.1, we will talk about quality and pertinence of the product's research and innovation objectives. That is, you will talk about you will explain your research and its objectives. Typically here, the way this is written is you may have a table. I mean, having tables or not, it's really up to how you want to present your information. Sometimes tables are the best way to display something, but sometimes they may be a bit cumbersome. But where you're going to talk about your RO, let's say your research objectives, right? Where you're going to address, and already here, the tip I can give is, since you only have 10 pages, you can already start cross-referencing things. For example, for research objective 1, that you're going to do something, you can already refer to the work packages or tasks or something that are coming only on section 3. So do not worry about, let's say, chronology, right? The proposal, the evaluators know that they should be looking back and forth, going from the first to the second to the third and back to the first to read your proposal, right? So don't worry about, oh, but this has not been introduced yet. It doesn't matter. Point to the references, use extensively these sort of like short naming for things. So WP for work packages, RO for research objectives, and then so on for impact and risk and so on. So prefer cross-reference things throughout your entire proposal to kind of bind everything together and make it sort of easy to read, right? Because you don't have that much space to introduce things and then refer to them and so on. Also on 1.1, you will describe the state of the art and how you go beyond it, right? To note here is state of the art is not a research survey, so do not spend half of your proposal doing a research literature of everything. Since you're doing excellent science, you're really going to talk about the best research, the state of the art that came out in the last, I don't know, depending on your field, it might be the last 3 years, depending on your field, it might be the last 6 months, right? Depending on how fast it moves. Common negative points for 1.1 are that the innovation potential is not convincing. So describe how you will bring this innovation. You will see that a lot of the negative comments are that something is not clear. You have to think that every single sentence you have in those 10 pages, they need to be there for a purpose. They need to serve a purpose in the goal that you have in writing your proposal. And think that if anyone else could have written that sentence, maybe that sentence is not very useful, right? So make, let's say, do your homework and explain things. Let's say when you introduce that you're probably going to do something, why you're going to do that, why that matters, how you're actually going to do that, right? or that ideas are not clear and you're using too much buzzwords. So be clear and objective. I mean, using sort of buzzwords, dropping names of things, they sometimes are useful, sometimes irrelevant, because you want to say that you're working with the state of the art, but overdoing and using and hoping that by using that name or that technology that will boost up your proposal by itself, that's not enough. Subsection 1.2, soundness of the proposed methodology. You will describe how the research project will be carried out. So you detail the experiments. You kind of talk a little bit more about how you're gonna do things. You will talk about the methodology, the interdisciplinarity of your research, if there is any, right? So this is actually something the evaluators will value a lot if you have it in your research. Of course, if it makes sense. If it doesn't make sense, then it doesn't. And you might very likely lose scores if there is a clear interdisciplinarity there that you did not develop in the text, that you did not explain, or you did not sort of explore how this would be used. Any gender aspects of your research, if there is none, I don't know, for example, you're doing some, you're submitting a proposal on mathematics that tend to be a simple example of proposals that will argue that so the research does not touch gender aspects. Even if it doesn't, you should say that it doesn't and explain with your arguments why it doesn't. That's one or two sentences, but make it clear that it doesn't. That's why you didn't address it more extensively. You will also cover open science and data management. So how are you going to deal with the data that you produce, and how are you going to share this? If you're going to use existing infrastructure from your organization to share this data, to manage this data, whatever is private, and so on. Common negative comments are, again, lack of detail in the methods. So describe things with enough detail, but not too much details, right? So evaluators, they may not be experts in your field. They may know roughly what the proposal is doing. Of course, that's how they're chosen, that they may not be the absolute experts in everything. So don't go into very, 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 very deep, fine-grained details, but you need to explain enough. You need to convince evaluators with what you're doing. Or another negative is that the gender or intersectoral aspects are not addressed. And again, if you have any of those, touch upon them, develop a bit, use a few sentences to talk about these aspects, because they're very much valued. Moving on, 1.3, quality of the supervision, training of the two-way transfer of knowledge. So here you will talk a few sentences about about the supervisor of the candidate, right? Because not everyone is a candidate here. That is, be clear and be objective. What the commission wants, or what the evaluators want, is to see that the person that is going to supervise this candidate is capable, is someone with experience in the field, is, let's say, was a good choice, right? It's not just simply someone available to supervise this PF candidate, but has no experience in the field, or has even no experience in supervising other researchers in the past. And that's where we also talk about the career development plan and transfer of knowledge. That is, for the PF, you will have to also learn. So it's both ways, right? You learn something from them working with that group, with the technologies and something that they have, but also the other way around, right? So you being an experienced researcher, you already have a PhD and maybe even a few years of postdoc. What kind of expertise you bring to the group, and how you're going to kind of complement with what they have been doing. Negative comments are usually that the training skills are not convincing. So again, any training that you're going to do, describe where you're going to get the scores, and why that matters to your work plan, right? You cannot just have something there that doesn't really fit, even though you may want to do it. And describe very well where you're going to get it from. Supervisors have limited experience. This, at least from experience, if you're applying with an academic supervisor that have had, let's say, PhDs and postdocs in the past, that's often covered. But if you are going to the industry, if you're doing if you want to do a PF where you're hosted at a company or an NGO or something, there you may have to spend a bit more time describing why the person that will be in charge of you at that organization is, let's say, capable of supervising you, right, during this research work. Moving on, 1.4, quality and appropriateness of the researcher's professional experience. Basically, why you're the best. I mean, why you are the great person to be funded for this, right? Then you, of course, you're going to mention this in terms of your previous experiences, technical and even a bit non-technical. So, right, if you're going to work in a group and you might cooperate with others, what have you done in the past that kind of made you the best candidate for being funded? Demonstrate your transferable skills. So again, things that are not technical and non-technical, or how you're going to use them, and reference to your CV if needed. Again, here might be the only place where you may, let's say, explain things with just enough detail and then point to part B2, where you will have an entry in your CV explaining things with a bit more detail, where the evaluator will get, say, the full picture, but include in part B1, let's say, the enough, say, key things that are relevant. So common negative is that the experience is not relevant. So if you add something that you've done in the past that is not really relevant, or say maybe for you it sounded relevant, but the way you wrote in the text, it was not relevant, right? So make things meaningful. Again, think that every single sentence you write in those 10 pages will be read, will be scrutinized, and will be evaluated, right? Everything is useful. And the supervisions are not adequately. So talk here on 1.4 how the supervision process is going to happen, and even how often you're going to meet, and so on. Now moving to section 2, impact, subsection 2.1, credibility of the measures to enhance the career perspective. That is, here it will talk about, if you get funded, what is this? What does this PF is going to bring to your career? How is that going to help you achieve where you want to be afterwards, right? Because that's the purpose. Be it because you want to be a professor, because you want to launch a spin-off, or whatever that is, right? So you have to make it clear on 2.1 the clear opportunities that being in this PF will teach you. Be it because you're going to learn a new technology, you're going to work with equipment that you didn't have the chance up to this point, and so on. The importance of the collaborations built during the fellowship. So again, if you're going to work with a group and that group has a good relationship with others, or the sub parts of the group, so people that manage labs and so on, the people you're going to work with during this fellowship, why are they important to you in your career progression during and after the fellowship? Common negative comments are that the future opportunities are not convincing. What I can tell you is, let's say, a common feedback I always give is very often people write, yes, I want to be a professor, right, after the fellowship. You have to be convincing. So if you write, I mean, that's perfectly fine with saying that your intentions is staying in academia. They're not necessarily better or worse in terms of evaluation or scoring. But what really counts is the text that you write, right? Imagine that, again, every single person applying can write that sentence, right? Like, I want to be a professor at the end of the PF. But develop the sentence a bit further, right? Say how being Marie Skłodowska-Curie Postdoctoral Fellow will help you move on to your next career step, right? What is that going to bring you with the publications you're going to do, the people you're going to get involved with, everything, right? The whole package. So explain things better. Or that the soft skill trainings are missing. So you will add to your training throughout your PF that you're doing some soft skill training, right? So say, be it presentation or management skills or whatever that is. So describe those, and again, where are you going to get, why are you going to get, where, and so on. Subsection 2.2. Subsection 2.2, suitability and quality of the measures to maximize expected outcomes. This is the sort of subsection that if I would recommend anyone spending the most of their time, say, assuming you have everything already done, that you assume it's done, and you still have, I don't know, a day, a week, however long you have, go back and revise again and again this 2.2, because this is where you will talk about something that, in a way, for any evaluator looking at it, is the easiest to penalize you, easiest to find mistakes in the plan that you're making, right? This is where you're going to talk about dissemination, communication, and exploitation. So dissemination being the papers you're going to write, the technical talks you're going to give for those papers, all that kind of stuff. Communication is for example, like social media. So that's more of you can think of communication as maybe the non-technical type of communication that you're going to do. But of course, will involve technical things, right? So how are you going to communicate? How are you going to talk about your research, your results to the community, to the rest of the world, right? And why that matters. And then finally, exploitation. So how are you going to exploit the results of your research? For example, you will start a spin-off after the PF, right? This could be one, or any other way, right? In the specific case of global fellowships, you have to talk here, and you will be evaluated strongly in this, is how the intellectual property rights will be handled between the institutions, right? One thing to say is, especially when you go to the United States, many universities there have very strong, very strict rules in how they're going to manage IP. In many cases, they want to keep all the IP. So if while you were there, while you had their kind of association with them, anything you touch belongs to them. And then, of course, your host organization needs to agree with it, right? Or I don't know, they have to come to an agreement, and you have to describe how this is done. So for those submitting a global fellowship, spend a bit of time beforehand, kind of defining these things more clearly with both institutions. Negative comments that you get are that the long-term impact are not clear or not measurable. So again, for the dissemination, communication, exploitation, what you're going to say is always, this is what I'm going to do. You start with a bit of project management here. This is what I'm going to do, and this is how I'm going to measure success, so to speak. So you're going to have to put meaningful metrics. Don't overdo on the metrics. You don't have to say like, oh yeah, I'm going to finish my PF with I don't know, 100,000 followers on LinkedIn, right? This is not say nothing unreasonable, right? That you are able to achieve in 2 years, right? This is what you have to aim for. Or the exploitation is unclear. That, for example, how are you going to use the results of your research? So make it clear, make it objective. Moving on. Subsection 2.3, the magnitude and importance of the project contribution, later on finishing with impact. So the title here of the subsection is a bit longer, but it basically talks about the impact, right? Where you're going to describe your scientific, societal, and economic impacts of your research, right? So in ways that you can measure it, in ways that you can assess it, in ways that you can sort of predict how well your research is doing, or at least what you expect to achieve with all of these. This is typically done with the table. I think maybe even in template, it's a table. But again, be very clear and objective in this, because as a negative comment, that a certain impact is not convincing. So one way to do this is that you go, for example, you refer to the state of the art, right? You refer to what the state of the art has been doing, how the results there have been exploited commercially, for example. And then say that by doing your research, you might achieve this, right? Or that your impacts are not quantifiable. Again, this is one good way to see how things are progressing, to measure, for example, a third of the way, half of the way, 2/3 of the way, or something like that, how well you're doing, to adjust the course, right? To maybe fix things and see how you can improve and still achieve your milestones and deliverables that you promise. Finally, section 3, implementation, 3.1. So section 3 has, I think, only these 2 subsections, so the quality and effect. So section 3 is the, let's say, the project management part of the proposal, right? 3.1 is quality and effectiveness of the work plan, assessment of risk, and so on. That's where you talk about your work packages and workload, right? Where you define your work package, your the tasks that you're going to have, your deliverables, your milestones, and how those are coming over time, right? How you're staggering them and how they, how they're somehow related or interdependent. A rule of thumb for number of work packages. I mean, this is not a written down rule. This is just let's say an advice that you should typically not have more than 6 work packages. Of course, if it makes sense for what you're doing, you can have more. But just typically for what we see is you're going to have usually 6 work packages. So 1 for management, 1 for training, 1 for communications, or dissemination, communication, exploitation, and then 2 or 3 for your scientific advancement, right? Like what you're working on, that they may be, again, staggered, they may be interdependent of one another. You will not have the 3 scientific work packages in parallel, right? This is not how it's going to go, right? You will typically finish one and lead the results of that to the next, but then one might extend a bit if you have some dissemination to do with that, or something that they may overlap. Common negative comments are that the work plan is too ambitious. Again, this is a 2-year project. I mean, don't promise, I don't know, 2 science and 2 nature publications by the end of your PF, because if you commit to those, you will be let's say, you will be expected to deliver those, right? So again, plan for a 2-year project, assuming everything else that you have to do, right? All the if you have data collection to do, if you have external collaborators, you may not be in control of everything that they do, right? What they can deliver, how they can deliver. So that might be tricky. Whether the risk assessments are insufficient. This is another part where I would say, from an evaluator's perspective, it's very easy for them to remove scores. So typically when we see those proposals that scored very high, 95 and above, this is typically where they lose points. So this is not to say for you to not care about it. Of course, it's be very mindful and try to cover as much as you can on possible risks that you may have, both scientific and non-scientific. What are measures to mitigate those, and like how you will deal with one of those risks may arise. On 3.2, quality and capacity of the host institution and participating organizations. So here you will describe the organization itself. So it's you may touch upon again the supervisor, so the PI experience, but the idea here, 3.2, is mainly cover the host organization, right? So where are you going to be, both? So in the European Fellowship, the host institution, maybe the place where you're also going to go for a secondment, and in the global fellowship, both the associated partner and the host institution, where you describe everything about them, right? So from the history of the organization, what kind of infrastructure they provide, and their say expertise in hosting this kind of work. And it will describe how you'll be integrated and complementing the group. So again, here, so it's not just between you and the PI, but the group you will be inserted in, like how you're gonna help them and how they're gonna help you throughout this work. Common negative comments are that the group integration is insufficient. That is, you're not really describing very well, again, how you complement them and how they complement you, or that the management structure is insufficient. again, how are you going to meet with the rest of the group? How are you going to meet with the people besides your supervisor? Because this supervisor you do a bit earlier, but how you deal with the rest of the team or the organization. For example, the data management people, how are you going to interact with them and so on. So that was it for like very, very intense. I know you will have the one thing we forgot to mention at the beginning. The recordings will be made available at the end of the presentation. Maybe today, maybe on Monday, you will receive it along with the slides, of course. So we will have time to go through this with a bit more time. But here, another aspect I would like to cover with you is the most common, so let's say the top 5 weaknesses criteria that we see in PF evaluation. So we, in the role that we play here at Luxinnovation, so we do 2 things. We are national contact points that do the job that we're doing here with you right now in supporting your, let's say, proposal preparation, submission, not just in Marie Curie, but the entire Horizon Europe stack, so to speak. But we also work as program delegates. So we go to Brussels, represent Luxembourg there in defining the next work program and so on. And through that, we see results, but we don't have access to proposals from other people, of course not, but we see the results of all other proposals. So we have this kind of overview of sort of basically the evaluation summary report of other proposals, not just from Luxembourg, so we can get an idea of at least, to bring to you this kind of insight. So in the excellence section, the most common, so the top 5, I'm just going to go through them here, is methodology. So the quality of your science, right? What you're trying to do there, and needs to be convincing, right? It needs to be top quality, right? The two-way transfer of knowledge, of information. So you have to cover very well these 2 aspects of how you're going to teach them and how they're going to complement. So yeah, how they complement you and what you're doing, and how you're going to complement them. So it cannot be just a one way, right? How are you going beyond the state of the art? You need to be convincing with that. So it's 2 things. So you describe the state of the art, and you say how you're going beyond that, right? Circling back to the methodology. Right? Your objectives are not clear. Like maybe you need to write enough information here. And the interdisciplinary approaches are either not well covered or not present. If an evaluator can see that there are interdisciplinary things, you will be penalized. On section 2, impact, basically the impacts are not clear, right? So the economic impact or the scientific impact are not well described, or are not convincing. Your communication plan is often an issue, that they're either overambitious or they don't make sense together. So why you choose to do certain things, or they might be too simple. I don't know. You can do just like a LinkedIn page and call it enough, right? For example, with communication, one thing you can do here in Luxembourg is now the name escaped me. The Science Slam with researchers. That's one way of doing science communication, right? That goes beyond, like LinkedIn posts and emailing people about it. That the target audience target group audience is not very clear. So when you describe in section 2, you have to specify for what you're doing, what your target audience is for your research. And if there are any intellectual property rights aspects in your proposal, you need to cover them. You need to describe, at least in some way, how things are going to be done. Even if it is, I'm going to be in this institution and all what I'm going to do is going to belong to the university. Even if it's just to say that, but cover it in one way or another, or how you plan to exploit it later on, and so on. Finally, on section 3, implementation. Again, the top of the list here is the assessment, risk assessment, and how you manage risks and how you manage the problems. So either they're lacking, so brainstorm this, try to revise this as much as you can. Because if there's something that's a sort of obvious, they may not be obvious to you, but someone else may have an idea. If an evaluator sees a risk that you didn't see, you're going to lose scores. The effort allocation is not It's not sound. So that is, I don't know, you're planning too much for your first year and not much for your second, or vice versa. So either the timing of things. So yeah, this is the last point. So the timing and the duration of some efforts or work packages or tasks. All of that need to be more or less distributed. It needs to make sense, right? You cannot have, let's say, too much or expect too much to be done at one point and nothing at the end, because I don't know. So you have to be clear with that. Plus your work packages and work plan need to be sound. For this, a recommendation that I would have is try to, how to put this, like try to talk to someone who already wrote a proposal, right? That's a good way to do it. And of course, talk to us, right? We can help you with that. But in sort of framing work packages and work plan is something that if you don't have that much experience in project management, let's say coming up with that kind of understanding on your own is a bit tricky. Another point I would bring to you here today, so is the use of generative AI, so large language models in proposal writing. I will start that by saying what is the Commission view, right? That we've heard already. Maybe if some of you have read, there is no restrictions. So the Commission does not see the use of generative AI or AI in any form or shape in proposal writing. That's not an issue. So of course you can do that, but of course be mindful, because at the end of the day, even if ChatGPT wrote your proposal, you're the one who needs to execute it at the end, right? That's the argument. It's the same as if you would say one common, let's say, kind of supporting argument people say is, yeah, you could use a consulting company to write your proposal. There's no much difference, right? From using a consultancy to write a proposal, or use ChatGPT to support you in a way someone else helped you. There's no merit in using a human or a machine to do it. But at the end of the day, the most important thing is that you as a fellow, if you get if you get a high score and you get evaluated, at the end of the day, you need to execute the job, right? It's up to you. So be mindful of that. One other point that the Commission made about this, but unfortunately is a bit unclear. So this is the best I can tell you is what they ask is during the proposal, at some point in the proposal, do you write that you used some of these tools, or you use these tools, and how you use them, right? Exactly how this is going to look for us is still a bit unclear, because it's still a bit new, and we haven't really heard. But so anything that you use, what I would recommend is maybe at the end of the proposal add like a small box saying so and so tools were used for these purposes, right? So tools that I can recommend for all of you to use. Unfortunately, we don't have time today to go through every single one of them and how exactly you can use, but again, they come here as a reference for you to read. We can discuss them later on with our, let's say, sort of individual support, but tools to help you write and rewrite the text. Of course, you might be already familiar with ChatGPT, Claude, or Gemini. I think they all have, so before I say this is not, of course, I think all of these are commercial tools. In a way or another, you may have to pay, or they may have like a freeware version or shareware version, like that you try it out for a few days and then we may have to pay. So I'm not financially helping any of them here. I'm not being sponsored or nothing. So I'm just advising you to give these ones a try if you can. And like almost anything else in life, I would say, like the more you use, the better you get, right? So even if you had some experiences with ChatGPT in the past that were not very good, maybe I don't know, maybe the question or the way you used it was not appropriate. So please just try to use it a bit more, and you will see that things get better. Another tool very good for brainstorming is Idea Factory. Tool for drawing figures. So I didn't touch figures during the kind of writing part of the presentation. You can have, of course, a diagram or something that shows some diagram or something. And of course, you can have that, but make sure that the whatever you're putting also makes sense, right? Don't add too much information. Don't add too many too many charts and graphs or numbers or words into that figure. The figure needs to speak by itself, right? Kind of just like writing a paper. Right? If you just add a figure for adding something visual on its own, it's maybe not interesting. And mind the graph could be one to help you generate some nice images. Lit maps. I put here on the top kind of diagram that they generate. So basically through lit maps. So when you're doing literature surveys, or in this case, mostly when you're searching for related papers or references to what you're doing, this tool draws it very nicely and connects meaningful papers associated to one specific paper. So, for example, you can go back to like a seminar paper in a field that you're writing, add that like the DOI or the title, and then it gives you say what papers followed up that one that were more impactful. And the tool Elicit can be also super helpful in literature survey. So if you need to write a survey on a topic, Elicit is very close to the way you use ChatGPT or Claude, for the matter, and you describe a bit your research, what area you're working on, and it kind of starts writing a little bit your literature survey. And of course, it's up to you to then revise, make sure that things make sense, and it also includes the references and so on. So it's very powerful. Then one last tip on using these tools that I would give is prompting. For those of you who are already familiar with it, know it. But if you don't, one thing that can, let's say, unleash really the power of some of these tools is spend a bit more time writing the prompt, like what you want the model to do. Here's one example. So you would start before adding the text. For example, if you want a summary of something, that you tell the model, for example, you're a helpful assistant, you have extensive knowledge in something, and you tell it already what it is. This text includes, I don't know, like a discussion, a presentation, or something. Like, basically, sometimes, depending on the summary that you may do, you could even have this prompt almost as long as your actual text that you want to summarize or combine or something. But the point is, like, the more information you give to these tools, the better results you get at the end, right? And you can also refine, saying, okay, can you please change this, and so on. You can tell these tools to also ask you clarifying questions. So if you don't understand something, ask me about it, and then summarize the following input text. So just kind of using a way to represent what you're giving it later to a maximum of let's say 1,000 characters or something. And then you give it the text and see what you get out. And then you can repeat that again and again, refining. You can even use these tools to help you with the prompting. So then you can use in another tool the prompt generated. So it's can be very good. Finally, the work that we do. So besides this webinar, we are here to support all of you, no matter your role. If you're a candidate, research facilitator support, research manager, or PI, we're here to answer questions on, for example, eligibility check, finding relevant projects and policies that you may have to mention during our proposal. We can do the proposal review, and we can answer legal and financial questions. Common question we get is how often in advance should we send the proposal to you to review? As soon as you can, right? The closer we get to the deadline, the less we can do for you, right? Because we may have other proposals to read, and then the time we can spend on the proposal to review is less because we may have other ones to do. Plus, if we give you a very detailed feedback 2 days before the deadline, you also don't have time to implement everything we say here. So as soon as you can, we're there for you. You will get with the presentation a few other references, a few other documents. I strongly suggest you go through, and here's a reminder of the dates. And with that, right on time, we conclude. So please come talk to us, me and Clarissa. We're here to help you. Regarding the questions, I haven't looked at the questions tab yet. But one thing I should have said at the beginning, today here, we'll try to answer questions that are, say, sort of general, that applies for everyone. If your question is specific to you, we'll try to address them separately so we don't keep people here. But thank you very much. Let me have a quick look. If there's no expert to supervise.
In the meantime, just to note that we're going to share the slides and the recording of the presentation in the coming days.
Right. I mean, I'll try to answer, I think, the question. So yeah, so the one question about the PowerPoint is you're going to get. So the first one, if there is no expert to supervise, could be supervision, for example, one person from each field. Yes, there can be, but at the end, you're still going to have, let's say, sort of one supervisor, right? So that person, even if technically they're not the absolute expert in the field, there are complementary things to it, right? So the person having at least expertise in supervising. So let's say if you have to pick one, let's say to be the main supervisor will be the one with the biggest experience, at least in supervision. That's what I would advise. And then to cover the technical aspects, then yes, you can have someone to co-supervise, to cover for areas. For example, someone is expert in, I don't know, AI, and the other one is in the, let's say, the medical field, that's where this is going to be applied, then yes, you can combine them. You don't have to have all the knowledge in just one person, but the main thing is the expertise in supervision. That has to be one person, and one person is going to be the main supervisor. Basic question. Well, yeah. So first person or third person, I think there's no rule. You can. So for the question of should I use I, or yeah, first or third person, I think both are fine. Just be consistent. I think it will be the same. I think you could even say we, right? Because you're working with someone else. But there's no rule here. So about the scientific communication, it's Science Slam is, I think, usually the FNR. So it's a FNR funded project that you can pitch, but then let's say you apply to the call to give your pitch, and then after you get it, you can present. Yeah, but that's just one, right? It can be many other things. It could be like open school days. Let's say if your department organizes, or you may try to organize it yourself. I don't know, that you go and present your research to pupils, if that makes sense to it. I don't know if you're talking about quantum mechanics. I mean, yeah, but there could be a way to introduce that to kids too. But it can be creative. Can the secondment be outside the EU for PF? Yes, the secondment can be anywhere. It can be in a third country. It can be in any place, just respecting the 1/3 duration. Yes. So briefly repeat the application steps. So if you go to the funding and tenders portal, if you just search Horizon Europe funding and tenders, you will find the call for Mercury MSCA PF. And there you scroll down to the bottom, you have submit proposal, and there you register, you find, and then of course at this point you've already agreed with your host institution and potential supervisor for this collaborative work. And there you will find the templates for all the documents, right? You will fill in all the parts, part A, B1, B2. Of course, tick the boxes on part A and part B2 because they're required, they're needed. If any of those are missing, you're automatically excluded. And from now until the deadline in September, you basically spend the time writing the proposal, right? And you submit it, I think as a PDF or maybe even as a Word document too, but like through the website, you're going to see how the submission goes. You submit the documents, and yeah, then you wait for the evaluation. I hope I answered the question. Can a company hire 2 postdoc fellows at the same time? Yes. So from a company perspective, there's no limit, there's no restriction. You can have as many candidates as you can manage. There's no restriction. In the submission, the only restriction is the fellow. So a person submitting, so candidate, right? So candidate submitting, they can only submit one proposal at a time. But from a company, you can get as many as you can. Yeah, so the templates, you download the templates, you fill in your computer, and then you upload the document. So the templates are, I think, Word documents, and they can be also, I think, rich text format or RTF. I think there are a few formats. I think there is LaTeX, but I would strongly advise against. Like, even if you're, have been working already in research for a long time, you would say, yeah, but I can do well in LaTeX. Save yourself some pain and just write it in Microsoft Word if you have access to it. It will be easier. Because you won't have that many references or anything, right? You basically just add a few, usually as a footnote in the page. So there's not so much, and you need to. So there are some, together with the sections and subsections, there are usually a few codes that need to appear together when you generate a PDF, so that the submission tool kind of identifies everything and splits your document. So in Microsoft Word, you just remove kind of the kind of suggestions that the template has, and you just leave the headings, and that's complete. If a company has questions about the program, can you attract? Yes. So for a company to hire people, one way of attracting fellows is through the Eraxis portal. So the Eraxis portal, so you can post on, it's a service by the Commission that you can post that you're offering a position in a certain way, and you kind of just like kind of job posting. Here at Luxinnovation, we don't do that, so we don't support the finding of fellows. So it's really up to you, like to your normal job posting or social media. So from our side, our support comes, let's say, once you have both for the PF, right? In many other cases, for example, if you're thinking about like a doctoral networks or the clusters part of Horizon Europe, that's something else. So don't take this as, so we can help you find partners for the collaborative projects, but the very specific case of MSCA Postdoctoral Fellowship, we don't provide support in finding fellows or candidates, right, for the matter. That's right. I hope I answered all the questions. If there's anything else, thank you all super very much for being there today. Thank you for your interest. For all of you interested, please get in touch with us, get in contact with us. We're both here, ready to help and support you. That's it.
Thank you, everybody. Really appreciate it. Have a great day.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.